Welcome to Backyard Oasis, a podcast designed by and for older adults living in the beautiful Pioneer Valley of Western Massachusetts and produced in the tech studios at Greenfield Community College in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Backyard Oasis reaches out to older adults who seek knowledge to help them live more thoughtfully, healthily, and happily, who hope to inspire others with their ideas, and who serve their communities in the interest of the greater good. We hope you join us frequently in our pleasant backyard oasis for wide-ranging conversations with a diversity of people who are growing older and want to talk about it.
Hi, this is Denise Schwartz. Helen Olson spent her lifetime getting to this place right here in Western Massachusetts. She was born in California, she lived there for quite a while, and then she lived in Chicago, and then she moved back to California. Hers was a kind of jumbled, uncertain life. And as she recounted in her book, which is called Getting to This Place, her life had its share of follies and miseries. Helen is going to tell us about her two-part life, out west and out here in Western Massachusetts, where she learned to bask in the beauty and serenity of the natural world and find herself. Hello, Helen.
Hello, Denise.
It's so good to have you here today.
And it's really very nice to be here.
So you grew up in California. You earned undergraduate degrees in nursing and art history in Chicago. You earned a master's degree in health administration back in California. You worked as a nurse, a high school counselor, and an owner of a nature-themed art gallery.
That is correct.
You did quite a lot.
Yes.
But, your childhood was not particularly easy or happy. You had a controlling mother. You had a daughter when you just graduated high school. You married and divorced, and you married again.
Yes, and not everyone marries their first husband twice, knowing that, of course, the same thing's going to happen.
So you divorced him again.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And then you moved again, and then you moved, and then you moved, and then you wrote a book.
Yes.
Well, let's start talking. Let's start with your childhood and your parents, where most stories start. You wrote in your book that you first became responsible for your mother at age 4. That's so young. You said it was a day when she fell to the ground and you worried that you may not remember what to do. Tell us about that. What happened? And then after that, let's talk about your mother, because you've really talked about her a lot and your ups and downs in life with her.
Yes, indeed. My mother became a full force throughout, all my life until she was no longer there. She had the misfortune of being an epileptic even when she was in nursing school, and had to help her roommate help cover it so she could make it through nursing school. So there were no medications, and at the time she married and had me, and I guess I was the one that was with her most of the time, and she figured at 4 years old I should be able to know how to run to the telephone, get the stool, get up to the wall where it hung, and call for help.
Oh my gosh, at 4 years old.
It was scary. It was particularly scary because she also had a disease of her gums, and she had false teeth. So I went through most of my life thinking that if I ever had one of these things happen to me, my whole teeth would fall out.
Oh my God, that's a lot for a 4-year-old to think about. I want to talk about your mom. She seems so interesting to me in a way, and yet I know it wasn't always, easy to live with her. But you said your mom was a nurse with an affinity for sophistication.
Oh, yes. Everything had to be with style for her. Now, this was a farm girl from rural Washington State, but a friend of hers told me much later in life that she was not going to come from that mold. Her mold was going to be someone who looked the best and in fact, looked like the movie star. She
Oh, my.
made clothes that, were like Lana Turner or Elizabeth Taylor. And she did that for me when I was a child. I had to look right all the time. My shoes were never to be dirty. And that was just the way she looked at life. Everything was to be just looking just the way she wanted it to.
Wow, it sounds kind of hard for a child.
It was. I don't think I was supposed to be a child. It was always that I should know. Well, it's like the old adage, children are to be seen and not heard.
Oh, dear.
And for my mother, they were to be seen looking their best.
Well, it was only a few pages into the first chapter of your book that you make a reference to nature when you talk about your childhood. In it, you wrote, newts, we all know what newts are. Newts prefer the safety under logs, away from foraging birds and animals. You then write that your retreat from the fear you felt in your house was your friend's home. Tell us a little bit about what was happening then, and maybe how your early fearfulness affected you throughout your life.
Well, my parents were engaged in fighting pretty much on a daily basis. My father was alcoholic. Mm-hmm. My mother would know he'd probably come home inebriated, so she built her anger as I sat there eating my hot dog at the table, and then he would come in and they would start their fighting. I was taught to run next door to our neighbor's house, nice little Della, short little South American lady who was full of feisty nature and would run over, get between my parents, and somehow make it right again until the next time. So it's like many people have gone through, I know, the discourse between parents.
Right.
And I did later learn, which I wrote about in my book, that I was a parentified child, basically, where both parents were too involved in their own troubles to really consider what my
situation
necessities
was.
were.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, my goodness. I'm thinking about that newt, that little animal that wants to hide where it's safe. Let's talk about how in your book you intersperse their stories about your life with anecdotes about nature.
Yes.
And why did you choose to do that? And then I think you're going to read something from your book about that.
Yes. I have something that I wrote because it occurred to me as I was preparing the book that more than ever, nature can give us a peace that is hard to find anywhere else. And I mean this for both children and adults, but I will read my experience. Bernice and Betty were friends of my parents. Their only daughter had grown and was away at college, and I was periodically left in Betty's charge. Their house had a comforting storybook aura for me. It was in the older part of town, so there were big leafy trees, rippling brick walkways, and lots of birds singing. The inside billowed with a history of family life, a comfortable, well-worn couch, a piano, and a closet filled with games and puzzles. And they, unlike my house, had framed pictures displayed throughout. But I loved Jerry Lee's room the most. Pink ruffles framed the windows and bed where cuddly stuffed animals perched in repose. It must have been during summer vacation, after my mother dropped me off one day, and Betty said, "We'll be going to the cabin today. I have to do some cleaning." We drove the same road out of town that my mother took to get to the beach. Hecker Pass is west of Gilroy, over a mountain that drops down into Watsonville and the Pacific coast. Forests of redwoods and pines line the road, but I never thought of them as a place that you could go. Betty turned off the highway onto a dirt road no one would even have known was there. It curved way downward for a short distance through the tall, tall trees, where it ended at a small cabin. I had never seen anything like this before. I was entranced by the sun-speckled wonderland of lush green, and left to my own device while Betty worked, the majestic trees and luxurious ferns became gentle guardians, and the stream was an engaging playmate. The melody of sights and sounds was mesmerizing. I was a child, and nature, better than anything, welcomes what children are: curious, imaginative, and trusting. The antics of frogs in the stream and cheery bird calls in the trees welcomed my keen interest in their world. I could not have described what I felt then, but I know now that my spirit floated in an oasis, void of expectation, fear, sadness, or anxiety. It was as if a door had opened onto a sunny place that beckoned me away from gray clouds.
Oh, it just sounds so beautiful. You know, we know that nature does that for us. I love the whole idea of, nature welcomes what children really are, full of curiosity and need for discovery. And that, the way you describe that, just sounds like you would found a place that you probably wouldn't want to leave. And guess what? Later on in your life, you found that place again,
Yes.
didn't you?
Yes. It took, oh my goodness, 6 decades. But
What happened? Why don't we just talk about that? We were going to wait a little while
No.
before we talked about how you got to New England, but let's talk about it now.
Well, my third and last husband, okay? I say this because we've got 32 years now, so I figure it's good.
It's going to last.
And we connected right away over nature in California. And weekends were spent hiking, and his daughters and mine would go with us on backpacking trips and so forth. We loved nature, and of course, on the central coast of California, it was there. Now, over time, there was much less nature, or at least harder to come by.
Because of development, you mean?
Yes, the
Okay.
development, and then the cars, the traffic, just trying to get from point A to point B got to be troublesome. So we had come out to visit my stepson, who lives here in the hill country. And that morning when I woke up, I felt like I was in Disneyland. And I hate to use that because it's all artificial, but the way a child often feels in Disneyland. It was so wonderfully luxurious. And we spent almost a week with him, and by the end of the week, we said, okay, we're retiring in a couple years. We're going to live here.
Well, what was it like? You were in, may I say the name of the town?
Oh, sure.
You were in Coleraine.
Yes.
And so when you woke up that morning, what did you see?
Well, trees with leaves. It's not that California doesn't have trees with leaves, but it's mostly evergreen trees.
Right.
And yet here, all of the deciduous trees were just all this lush variety of green color and birds everywhere. And then, of course, the water. And as we know, California, in essence, is drying up.
Yes.
So the streams that Bob and I used to know in California where we would hike became dried.
Oh, my.
And we couldn't even see the newts and the frogs that we used to so readily. So the water in and of itself, too, and the river and the streams was just heavenly.
So you just picked up and moved to Coleraine, Massachusetts?
No, first we had to take a lot of grief from friends and family who thought we were absolutely nuts because, of course, in their mind, everybody wants to live in California, and those that are not I mean, those that are not living there want to live there. And but they weren't going to understand. But Bob and I are a little different that way, and we are both on more of the introvert side. So it all fit for us. But it took us 3 years. We did find a piece of property. We had someone looking after it for us, but we had to finish out some responsibilities.
Now that you've been there for a few years, is nature still important to you? Do you find it as mesmerizing as you did when you first saw Coleraine, Massachusetts?
It is, especially because it's not just the foliage,
right?
The flora, but here we have all of the fauna too. I mean, we see raccoons and squirrels and fox and weasels, and this is heavenly. This is not like California because the animals pretty much have gone to the little areas they can and manage to live in it. You don't really see wildlife.
Well, we really do have a beautiful natural environment here. And I'm just asking, I was going to ask you as we wound down, but we're not ready to do that yet. Have you managed to see a bear in your backyard yet?
Oh, yes.
There's nothing like it.
We have wild blueberries in our meadow. And so we're always on a lookout to see when we can watch a bear. Of course, the main way that people in Coleraine see bears is when they're attacking their bird feeders.
Oh, yes, right.
And many of us know that we have to make the trip out in the morning to put the feeders there and then back out in the evening to take them in, because otherwise you have bent poles.
Absolutely. We have a number of those bent poles in our house, too.
Oh, yes.
So let's do this. Tell me, why did you write your book?
I wrote my book first. Well, first it was a collection of journals. I've been journaling for most of my life. Also, I was a member of a very active writing group in California who did publish some very short things and so forth. And I was looking over all of this and just sort of going down a little melancholy lane. And then it started to form itself into a story. And then the story to me seemed that my experiences, especially for people maybe in my age group or a little not so senior, have had a lot of the same experiences. And that maybe my experiences together with the insight, the understanding that I think I developed and then could add as I wrote the book would be of help to other people. I mean, that was the bottom line to me. Is a lot of people, I'm very intuitive, and a lot of people these days seem to have just permeating from them some fears and frustrations that we all, I think, can help each other in whatever way we can to at least tone down.
So, when you write a book, it's a labor of love, but it's also a learning experience for the person who's writing it. What did you learn?
Denise, first I learned that, wow, I can give myself credit for not just, first of all, just surviving a lot of the very frightening situations that I recount. And then that I even did more than that. I accomplished a professional, I could work in professional work. I had family and grandchildren now. And most of all, I realized the joy that one can get from life. So that was a very big thing I learned. The other thing was what I learned from the research I did about not just the nature, which was wonderful that I could insert all these little anecdotes that came along the way, but what I learned about human nature.
What was that?
I think that the main thing is that we are all we all tend to...
It looks like you want to read something from your book right now.
I'm trying to find this one little thing. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. We know now that human response is influenced by some instinct and a lot of what scientists call prepared learning. That is, ingrained cultural beliefs and practices that come from our own personal histories. We've all seen and experienced the good, the bad, and the curiosity. But we have a propensity to communicate, recognize, evaluate, and bond. We're fascinated by the lives and emotions of others, and we love stories. The tremendous popularity of social media is proof of this. When we coax ourselves to embrace what Abraham Lincoln called our good angels, we realize that the people we disagree with or even hate are not the real problem. They're human beings with strengths and weaknesses just like us. The threats to our compassionate connecting are the beliefs, cultural forces, and institutions outside of us that promote their own self-focus and obsession for their own benefit. And just as for Abraham Lincoln, this was just like slavery had been. So I really, probably my passion lately is to tell people, I think we're all feeling, we have our own personal difficulties, and now
Right.
it's layered with, from what I can tell in the more recent decade of my life, layered with a lot of outside stresses, things that we cannot necessarily do something about. But we need to be able to have our daily lives such that we can feel content in some way. So my whole point, I didn't realize, this became interesting. I wrote the whole book without any mention of politics or religion, and I am thrilled that it worked that way. And it was because it came from my heart that we need to put those things aside and just relate to each other as troubled as we all are. And my big deal lately is just smile.
Just smile and be kind.
Just smile.
You know, I really like what you said, and I know we're winding down now, so I'm going to. I like what you said about we can't do a lot about the whole big world, but we can do something about our small worlds, and if we do that and make them the best that we can, this sounds like such a cliche, but like really, it's true. If we can make our everyday worlds pretty good for ourselves and those people we know, try to make it good for others. Another cliche, try to be kind. You know, we will have an effect. I really do believe that, and I think that's what your book is trying to say also.
We really do.
Is there anything else that we should say before we wind down?
Oh,
We've said quite a lot.
I can't think of it. Just that I did try to put some little smattering, I think, just became humor just in and of itself. and I think people would find themselves often throughout. And I just
in your book.
hope, yes, it would give them also some peace and some of what I learned.
Well, I like that. I like that you said that humans love stories. I enjoyed reading your book. I enjoyed parts of your story. Some of it was not happy. I'm sorry that you had to go through those, but I must say, sitting across from you right here and talking with you a little bit before we started this made me understand that you are a really nice person, and it's fun to talk with you. I think you're going to do really well there in that beautiful location in Coleraine. Helen, how can people find your book?
Yes. Well, local bookstores do have some copies, but also they can find me on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Target, any of the large ones too.
And it's called?
And it is called Getting to This Place
By
Helen Olson.
Thanks. I hope people get a copy.
Thank you.
I wish you the very, very best. I hope You also get to see a bear this spring in your backyard because they are out now.
Yes.
Helen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
This concludes today's podcast. We're always looking for new ideas, so feel free to reach out to Judy Raper, Associate Dean of Community Engagement at Greenfield Community College at 413-775-1819 if you have an idea you'd love to share. Special thanks to the creators of Backyard Oasis, Denise Schwartz, Chad Fuller, Dennis Lee, and Christine Copeland. Have a great day.